Understanding how to sell is the most important skill that you can learn. I've sold over $1 million in software over the last few years, and I want you to be able to do the same thing with whatever product or service it is that you're building. Sales is highly transferable. So if you work in tech like me, you need it to sell software. But if you're a teacher, you probably need it too to communicate the importance of your lessons. Ultimately, whether we like it or not, we sell every day. And I think that those of us who have got what we want out of life have understood three things: when, where, and probably most importantly, how to sell. The issue is that the word sales alone provokes this dark cloud. When someone introduces themselves as a salesperson, you're probably thinking Jordan Belfort in The Wolf of Wall Street, some manipulative person. But what we maybe don't consider is ourselves as salespeople. Maybe when we're sat in an interview, communicating why we're good for the role. Or maybe when we're actually interviewing a potential employee and communicating our vision for the company. Don't let a few Jordan Belforts stop you from learning probably the most important skill set of the 21st century, that I think AI probably won't be able to fully erode. So bulletproof yourself by learning my 11 principles on how to sell anything. So get your pen and paper ready. So principle number 1, sell what people are buying. People don't like to be sold to, but they sure do enjoy buying. The quickest way for you to build sales momentum is to sell into an already established market. When you're selling something, you'll quickly realize that you're in one of two scenarios. Either you're running downhill or you're hiking uphill. And in as much as you can control the circumstance, choose the former. You want to be running downhill when you're selling. And the best way to be running downhill is to sell into a bullish market. You want to position your product or service in a market where people are already buying. If you do the opposite of what I'm saying, you're probably trying to create a market to sell into. It's not impossible, but it's a very tall task, and you'll probably need some venture capital or private equity money to achieve this. I'm more concerned with the people who want to sell and make a profit from day one. Never forget that cash is king. Yes, you probably love the product or service that you're building, but you need a market for it. I'm all about distribution. Because without demand for your product, your dream will die. And you can avoid this outcome by somewhat profiting from the work of others and sell into an already established market which is ready for you to capitalize from. Principle number 2, sell what you know. If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. Sales is all about clarity. Just because you're an effective salesperson, it doesn't mean that you should sell everything and anything. In fact, the most effective salespeople that I know are extremely detail orientated. Why? Because they understand customers can smell BS. You cannot sell what you do not understand. Here's a little bit of truth. I've been guilty of this. In recruitment, there's something called an application tracking system, and it helps companies understand who has come across from your site to their site to make an application, so they can track how effective you are at giving them talent. At the beginning of my tenure at my startup, I really didn't understand this, so I chose not to learn it. Between you and me, I probably lost the company about $15,000 of sales. The lesson that I learned here is that you need to be the expert in the product or service that you're selling. And granted, it might be easier if you're the one building or designing the product, but if you're not, you need to take an extended amount of time to learn the ins and outs of the product. And not just the product or service itself that you're selling, but have a look at your competitors too. Principle number 4, be clear on who your customer is. If you don't know who your customer is, you don't know what quality is. Eric Ries. Everyone is not your customer. If you get asked the question, who is your customer, you need to be able to define it clearly and succinctly. in 1 to 2 sentences maximum. So who is your customer? People often get confused by what the definition of who your customer is. Your customer is the individual who is buying the product, service, or whatever it is that you're building. Is the purchaser an individual consumer? Is the purchaser a company? Find this out and then write down all of their key characteristics. If the purchaser is an individual consumer, find out their age, socioeconomic status, demographic, interests. If the purchaser is a company, what industry are they in? How big is their company? And you can normally measure that by how many employees they have. If the purchaser is an individual at a company, what's their role title? This is what I mean by being highly specific about who you're targeting. You need to be able to define who your customer is as if they were a friend. If you can't do this, you don't know who you're selling to yet. You need to be able to say something like this: I sell yoga classes to pregnant women who are struggling with joint pain, who are due to give birth in the next 3 months. Or let's take technology for example. I sell product analytics software to product managers to help them better understand how their products are being utilized by customers. Once you have that level of aim, it's all about communicating your value. Principle number 7, reach out to a lot of the same people. Sales are contingent on the attitude of the salesperson, not the attitude of the prospect. It's easy to forget that nobody knows who you are when you're starting out. Unless you're famous or have some cult level following, the majority of us will start out with our product or service and a handful of potentially interested customers. Some of these customers will be friends, some will be friends of friends, others will be customers who said they were interested but have long since disappeared. You'll probably have 1 or 2 people who are genuinely interested in paying for your product or service at the beginning. Because of this, you'll need to go out and find customers. Your lack of presence means that you don't have the luxury to wait and see who arrives at your door. You'll need to go out and find these people. This is normally known as outbounding or cold calling. Generally, you'll close about 2% of these. So for every 1,000 calls or emails that you send, you'll probably close about 20 of them. Over the last 3 years, my closure rate has been between 4 to 5%, so a little bit above average, but still pretty small. Whilst 20 people for every 1,000 that you reach out to might seem small, if you're selling high ticket value items, which cost say $20,000, those 20 calls could equal to $400,000. Numbers aside, there's 2 principles which I've kept close when outbounding, which is why I think I've been successful with the cold calling approach in sales. The first one is to reach out widely. There's a reason why I shared those numbers with you, because you will have a 98% rejection rate. And most of the time, that rejection will just be pure silence. So in order for you to hit that 2%, you need to reach out to a lot of people. Finding new customers is a game of volume. Whoever reaches out the least lessens their chance at closing sales. This is true for selling a product, and this is true for being on YouTube. The less that you upload videos to YouTube, the less chance that the algorithm has to put you in front of the people who might find your content valuable. And the less views you get, the less subscribers you get, and so on and so forth. So rule number 1 of outbounding is simply to send out a lot of emails to potential customers. My rule is 20 a day or 100 per working week. The second principle of outbounding is to reach out to the same person. You only want to reach out to those who are willing and able to pay for the product or service that you're offering. Otherwise, you will be sent to the junk mail. Combining the two sounds a lot like a riddle, but your cold sales approach should be both high and narrow. Simply put, you should reach out to a lot of the same person. Principle number 9, make your offer simple. Don't make me think. So you've managed to get to the stage where the prospect wants you to present an offer. Congratulations, but the job's not done here.
You're up 2-0. What's the story? Are you not happy, or you're only half happy, or?
Still to be happy about.
You're up 2-0.
Job's not finished. Job finished? I don't think so.
The offer is where you have an opportunity to communicate the value that you're going to deliver to the customer and attach a price to it. Here, you want to remind the customer why they will become better by working with you. You can also introduce things like urgency, scarcity, and exclusivity. So for example, the first 5 customers get 5% off. But what you want to avoid doing is providing a discount on the product or service from the outset. Studies have actually shown that it can reduce your closure rates by 17%. And I think it's because it shows too much desperation to the customers. You also need a pricing structure to present your offer. I suggest not having more than 3 price points, otherwise it can get a little bit confusing. Sales guru Alex Hormozi, the author of $100 Million Leads and $100 Million Offers, says to have a low, middle, and high price point. And he suggests putting the middle price point closer to the high price point. Putting the middle price point closer to the high price point makes the highest price point look like a steal. And that way you can sell more of your premium offer. Sales is only a bad thing when you refuse to learn it because you think it's bad. You're always selling your ideas, your skill set, your personality, your product, your boss's product. Dan Coe. You can imagine the last piece of advice I will impart on you. Learn to sell. I'm not going to sit here and lie and say sales is easy. It's largely an uncomfortable process because of the rejection that it involves. But you have to think of the long-term sizable returns that you'll get from learning to sell. The uncomfortable short-term process is worth it because whilst you're learning to sell, those skill sets are being soaked in by you too. I would even go as far to ask, if you're not getting some of the results that you want out of life, is it because your sales script needs a little bit of tweaking? I know amazing artists, teachers, and creatives who are struggling because they haven't implemented some of these simple principles I've shared with you today. Personally, learning this skill set has changed my life to the extent of being able to demand money outside of a big institution. So if you're looking for your next paycheck, this might be your golden ticket out. This video was only to act as a teaser, by the way. If you want my full 11 principles on how to sell anything, it's over on my podcast Prolific. I'll make sure I leave some links that you can click in the bio and in the comments, and I'll get something on the video as well for you to click on. Also, if you're looking for some sales consulting help on your business, leave a comment below and I'll make sure that I get back to you. I'll see you next time.